There we go. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining me today. I'm going to be going over kind of our field kickoff and plan for the NABAT program for this year. So hopefully there's some good information here. If there's anything that I don't cover or if any questions come up, you're welcome to interrupt me or post them in the chat and I will answer them as I go. But I will have some time at the end as well to have a larger discussion if that's something that people are looking for as well. So to begin, just to give us a quick overview of everything, I will be going over just a quick general introduction about the North of Northwest Hub, who we are, what we're doing, as well as NABAT. I think most of you here are aware of this, so it's going to be very quick, and then I'm going to jump right into some news about what's going on with the bats in our region. And the big kind of chunk of this meeting is really going to be spent in these last 3 points. Going again over the workflow of what we do. I know most of you have done this, maybe even 10 times already, but there's been a few little changes here or there, so we want to make sure that everybody's up to date with all of that. So to begin with, the North of Northwest Bat Hub. So I think most of you are aware by now that the former BC Southeast Alaska Hub has joined forces with the Alberta Hub, and now we're the North of Northwest Hub. This hub really came together with the leadership from the provincial governments, so Alberta and BC, but also with the leadership from the Alaska government. And it encompasses kind of this range here that we see, but I've already had a few people reach out and ask for support and help in other areas. So there's a good chance that we will continue to expand and include other folks as well. So WCSC has done an amazing job of leading the charge in NABAT for BC and a little bit in Southeast Alaska for 8 years, and last year they handed off the baton to Biodiversity Pathways or ourselves, but they are still very much involved in all of this, and I am still getting a lot of support from Jason and from all the crew out in BC as well. So I do want to kind of highlight them and show my appreciation for them. And everything that we do, of course, is based on the NABAT program. So this program is well established in the US and in Canada, and they've been doing some great stuff, but we follow their protocols and all of the data that we collect. The whole point of that is to share with them so that they can also, so it's widely available to a lot of different bat researchers out there. And we can do some cool information, cool research with data that's available to everybody. So in terms of bat news and what's going on with the bats, as most of you should know by now, because we've been kind of harping on this, the whole reason why this NABAT program first started was because of rising threats to bat populations and not having kind of an established database of data for the bats. So it all came about because of the spread of white nose syndrome and PD, the fungus that causes it. So in the last few years, we've seen it be introduced into a region and it's continued to expand. Last year, when we last talked, Alberta had detected the fungus, but we actually found bats that were sick with the fungus last spring as well. So we actually have white nose syndrome in Alberta already. And so we're expecting that spread to just continue to grow. And we're actually going to go out next week here nearby Edmonton to see if we can see some white nose in kind of this area where we detected PD last year. So in BC, we've detected the fungus, but it's still out to see kind of how the spread has happened, if it's not been as fast in BC as it has been in other places. And of course, we're really close to Southeast Alaska here, so as it spreads, it's gonna just hit everybody in here. When it comes to our bat species and kind of updates on that, we know that in Canada, the northern myotis and the little brown bat, which are the two bats that are listed for this in this region, have been listed for a while. In terms of the USA, I know that there's been a lot of talk about getting the little brown bats listed, but as far as I'm aware, there hasn't been any updates on that since last year. So unless anybody from Alaska or Alaska representatives has any updates that they know about that want to share with the group, I'm going to say that it's still pending and we're still hoping that that pushes through quickly so that more stuff can be set in place. I'm gonna give 3 seconds to see if anybody in Alaska wants to pipe up. Yeah, yeah. So it's still under review. Still hoping to see what happens there. But unfortunately, as we all know, the threat of winos is not the only threat that our bat population is seeing. We're also looking at wind energy development, and this mainly impacts our migratory species, right? So this map I got from the US wind turbine database, and these are all the projects that have been built in the US for wind turbine development. So this doesn't include planned new projects or planned new projects that are coming up. And we can see that even though it's mostly concentrated around this region here, there's still some work going on right south of our region. Similarly, here in Canada, same thing, got this from the Canada Wind Turbine Database. There is lots of wind projects going on in our region for sure. And again, these are the ones that have already been built, and it doesn't include any planned projects. And I know that both BC and Alberta have quite a few planned projects that are set to start building soon. So with this like explosion of wind energy development, we know that it's not good for our migratory species. There's a lot of mortalities with our hoary bats, our eastern red bats, and our silver herds. So that's something that we really need to look out for. Last year, CSIWIC assessed our migratory species here in Canada, but we're still waiting to see them get actually added to SARA so that more legal things can go into place and we can actually start doing a better job of monitoring and potentially recovering these species if we need to. So as sad as it is to talk about all these threats to bats, this is a very good reminder of why it is that we do what we're doing, because we can't really monitor and manage any of these species without knowing what's going on with them, right? So here I am showing you a map. So the NA-BAT program works on this grid system, right? So they actually covered the whole of North America in these 10 by 10 kilometer grids. And then assigned a number on priority on how much we should be sample or how important it is to sample these grids based on a random, stratified, spatially balanced model. So if you look at the top 5%, or how NABAT calls them, their priority grid cells, for our region, specifically in Alberta and Southeast Alaska, we have about 70 in Southeast Alaska, and about just under 500 in BC. So we know that as much as we want to, having the resources to sample all of these grid cells, not really going to happen, unfortunately. But that leads us to kind of the grid cells that we are sampling right now. Here in the map, I've included any grid cell at all that's been sampled at least once. But to clarify, within Alaska, we have about 9 active ones, and within BC, we have about 60 active ones. Plus or minus each year, it changes a little bit based on people's availability and stuff like that. But I know I said this last year, and I will probably say it again. You cannot underestimate the importance of your grid cell, because when we're only dealing with a couple grid cells, like 60 or even 9 grid cells, each pass, each point just gives us so much information that is going to be vital when we're making these trend analyses and making these maps into the future. So I do want to take a little bit of time to really, really, from the bottom of my heart, say thank you to all of you for being involved, for continuing to be excited and involved about this. I know sometimes it feels kind of boring to do the exact same thing year after year after year, but I will show you later in the presentation what we can get from doing that, and we can have some really good monitoring done for this whole region. So really, again, thank you so much. Um, and it really is a great chance for us to see what's going on with our bats. So, with all of that being said, I just wanna now move gears into talking more about kind of our work plan and making sure that we're all up to date, and kind of on the same wavelength to make sure that everybody is doing the same sort of stuff. So to begin with, the very first thing that we all get to do is do some data collection. And this is where everybody gets to go out in the field and really enjoy being outside. Um, I think this is probably people's favorite part, or one of their most favorite parts. Getting to go to these beautiful spots, setting up some equipment, and just having a great day out of that. But with that, when you're out there, I still need you to be very diligent and very careful about how you're setting up your stuff, but also how you're collecting that extra bit of metadata that we use towards our models. So a few things that I wanted to highlight for today in terms of deployments is making sure that they are the exact same thing every year. And also, even if it rains on your setup day, in my opinion, a rainy field day is better than any office day. So it's still fun. Sorry, anyways, looking at the comments. But talking about deployments, please make sure as much as possible to make them the exact same. So that includes the equipment that you use. I think most of you are using the same equipment year after year. But if this is something that's sort of new to you, having the same equipment really helps a ton, because different equipment pieces can have different sensitivities, and it's one less thing that we have to worry about. That being said, make sure you update firmwares, make sure you still check the sensitivity for your microphones, because that can go down with exposure and stuff like that, before you go out in the field. And when you're setting up your deployment, use the pictures that you took last year. Use the data and the information that you have from previous years to try and get them as close as possible to the same site and the same point. So you've all probably seen these pictures before, but it's just such a great example of what it looks like to deploy in the same spot year after year. You can see this tree here in the background has continued to grow, and it's close to getting up to where the microphone is. This would be the only situation where moving your deployment might be of benefit. So if you go to your deployment site and you see that things have changed and now you're in a very cluttered space, but you can see an opening, or you can see somewhere where you're going to have a little bit more space, you can move your site a little bit. Just make sure to make note of that in our notes so that we can account for that and use it as needed. What I always like to say is 5 to 10 meters or 15 to 30 feet away from clutter. Clutter being anything that a bat can crash into when they're flying around, right? And clutter actually also includes water for two reasons. If you have fast running water, it can actually produce ultrasonic sounds that creates noise in our background, and it makes it difficult to identify the bat call. And if you're not in close to water that's fast running, but it's very stagnant water, it can actually be a foraging site for bats. And at that point, you might actually get a lot of bats coming in, which sounds like it would be a good thing, but in our recordings, we like to have a single bat per each recording. So if we have multiple bats in one recording, it makes it more difficult both for the auto ID software, but also for the person manually vetting, to make a good call on what species it might be. So this 5 to 10 meters, 15 to 30 feet also applies to water. If you can move it, and if it's simple enough and it's not like a crazy distance that you're moving, I would recommend moving it if you need to. But if everything looks the same and everything looks good, try to make it as close as the same as it was in previous years. So you're out there, you're setting up your equipment, and while you're setting up your equipment, we need you to collect some metadata and good information that we can use when we're looking at these data. So this year, again, we're using Survey 123. I will send an email, a follow-up email with the recording, with notes, and with the link to the Survey 123. Please use the updated link that I send because this Survey 123 now lives under the Biodiversity Pathways organization rather than the WCS organization. So it is kind of a big deal if you use one or the other right now. But that being said, it'll be a very, very similar survey type. We'll still have the same thing that we did last year, where if your grid cell number and your site name perfectly match, it will automatically populate as much of the information as it can. So that's a really good reason to use Survey 123 over the previous either Excel sheets or PDFs or paper data sheets. And Survey 123 works offline. You just need to download it first when you're at home. And if you want this to be pre-filled in, you also need to just put in the site name and the grid, and then all of that populates. You can save it to your phone or your tablet or whatever device you're using, go out in the field and finish filling it out. And then when you're back in reception, you can upload it and send it in. So this is my real push, and I'm really, really encouraging you to use Survey 123 and put it in there. The only thing that I also wanted to highlight with this is that for folks that are using WCS equipment, this year you will have to deploy 2 sets of equipment, so the WCS equipment as well as the Biodiversity Pathways equipment, so that we can get a correction factor for changing out our different types of equipment. So with that, that is not going to be pre-filled in for you, of course, so you will need to make sure to include both sets of equipments, their IDs, and their information. And I will go into a little bit more of that later on. The next thing, so Stephanie, the Excel and paper forms are not completely obsolete. Like if you, for whatever reason, can't use Survey 123, I will still accept any sort of paper form. But I am really trying to push towards this way because I truly believe it'll make it easier on you. And I know for sure it'll make it easier on me. So if you have whatever problems with Survey 123, feel free to use previous forms. I can still kind of handle them and manage them. Awesome. So the next thing that I wanted to highlight was photos. So this year, I am asking you all to take at least 4 photos of your deployment. The first photo should be including the deployment itself, but pointing towards wherever the mic is pointing, right? So kind of like this first photo that you see here, and then turn 90 degrees, take a step back, make sure your deployment is included, take the next photo, 90 degrees, so that we get this big kind of visual representation of what it all looks like, and we can tell how much clutter is in the back, what's going on at either side of the deployment. The only thing that is not really well illustrated in this presentation right now is we still need you to take the pictures in landscape. So if you're using your phone, make sure that you put that in landscape format, just to make sure that we get the big context of everything that's going on. So these are the 4 main photos that I really want to see everybody take when they're out. But also remember, you can still take lots of fun photos, add them on, photos that we can use for kind of advertising or photos that I can use for presentations like this. If you want to be highlighted, feel free to add those in there as well. The other thing that I also wanted to highlight, sorry, Stephanie, 16 photos total you're talking about for the whole grid cell, assuming that the grid cell has 4 sites.
No, sorry. I was trying to understand what you're saying about the additional photos. Maybe I misunderstood. Are you saying we
Oh,
take a photo, you take one photo that's directly looking, say, north, and then while
mhm.
you're still standing in that same position, you take another three photos at 90 degrees at each of
Mhm.
those four spots?
So not exactly in the same position. So I imagine trying to recreate these four photos. So your first photo is going to be facing whichever way your microphone's facing. And then you will have to walk around, walk to the other side, try to get your 90-degree angle and take the next photo. So this would be, if we're assuming this is north, east, south, west. So
Oh,
you'd
okay.
only be taking
Okay.
four
Yeah.
photos, but
Okay.
you are trying to include the whole deployment with it as well.
Gotcha. Okay. That's what I've been doing before, so that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Thanks.
and and that's why I have these photos to show. I'm pretty sure these are from Pemberton, if I remember correctly. Um, But so some folks are doing it, other folks are doing like a one photo, two photo. There's lots of different kind of standards for photos, which is not the worst thing possible, but as much as possible, let's try to get at least four photos. And then any other fun photos that you want to take, you're more than welcome to take as well and share. Awesome. Oh, it's an O'Callaghan. There you go. I love that Krista knew exactly where it was. Great job. Sweet. Moving on, I just want to clarify this clutter volume estimate one last time. And so remember, you're imagining this dome that comes over the whole deployment, and the dome is about 50 meters in the radius of a 50-meter dome, aka 165 plus or minus feet. So if we look back at these photos here, um, not the best example using photos to get this clutter estimate because we don't know what the distance is, but just looking at where this tree is kind of hitting here, and all the shrubs, if we're imagining this dome around us, I would guess that the tree is somewhere around here, and then you have a little bit of clutter kind of here at the bottom. It doesn't look like to either side or to the front of the mic, there's a ton of clutter. So you can probably say maybe about 30%, 30 to 40%, right? So that's kind of how, again, using photos is not the best example, but just imagine yourself in a big dome and how much of that space is there something that a bat can hit at any moment. The last thing I also wanted to clarify, this is mainly for the people from Alaska joining us is in the Survey 123 form, every measurement that you put in there should be in meters. Um, looking through some of the Alaska data, sometimes I question myself a little bit about how much of it is in feet versus meters. And I just want to clarify with you guys, please make sure to put it in meters. If you do end up putting it in feet, you can come back later and update that entry, and change it back to meters. And your feet to meters conversion is divide by 3 point and a little bit more. Um, and again, if you completely mess that up and stuff like that, make sure you just send me a quick message if you remember, if you notice it. But as much as possible, while you're in the field, just do the quick conversion, plus or minus in your head, to make sure that we're not messing up those units. Awesome. With that, did anybody have any questions about their deployments or anything that came up, that you want to highlight or you have anything to say? Yes, go, Chris.
Hi, thanks. I've just got a couple of questions. One is there's a reference in the protocol to a microclimate data logger. Do we need that, or is it sufficient to just like note the weather and write it on our field forms or 123?
Yeah, so what we do, we try to have data loggers. So I'm using Kestrel drops. People have used hobos in the past. Because we find that usually weather, temperature, weather stations, that's a word that I was looking for, can sometimes be very wrong if you're going from very high elevations to low elevations, valleys, and stuff like that. So we like having a way to tell the temperature and humidity at the site at those specific times. But that is very much an extra bit of information that we use in our models. If you don't have access to any of those, it's not a big deal. The Survey 123 actually does have a column that asks for that and says, are you deploying one of these? Yes, no. So it's not an absolute must to do that. And
Okay.
actually, on that point, Chris, I am updating the field guide for this year. And same thing, when I send you the link for the Survey 123, I'll also send you the link for the guide. So everybody can include all of these little changes in their protocols.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And another question. So, on several of our mics, like half of them at least, maybe more than half, uh, the there's like a little cover over the mic that has been, it's like a plastic cover and it's been pecked out, and I'm almost certain it's from like sapsuckers. They think
Yeah.
they're on a, it's like a hole in a tree or something. And so I've noticed it doesn't look like it's damaged. They're really expensive to replace, and so we've just last year we just set them aside, but this year we're going to actually be putting all of them out at the same time, which means I will be putting out some that have that bird damage. Um, but yeah, I'm not sure if you have any feedback on that or a way to test it to see if it's good enough.
Yeah, so there are like these calibration units. So what they do is they emit a sound at a set frequency, and then you can see if your detector is detecting it that same way. I don't know exactly what kind of detectors you're dealing with, Chris.
They are the hmm.
Wildlife acoustics or
Yeah, it's the
Titley?
wildlife acoustics
Okay.
mics. Yeah.
Yeah. So in wildlife acoustics, if you look up their manuals for the units, they talk about calibration. And you can buy this little, I don't actually know how much it is to buy the calibrator, but that tells you how good and sensitive your mic continues to be. So make sure you test all of those mics. And they tell you there's a set number. If it's below that number, then all of a sudden it's not very good at sensing stuff, and you can just put it aside.
Okay. And sorry, just to clarify your comment earlier about the you were saying there's going to be new sets of gear coming out. So our CWS stuff, like, does that include us, like BC Parks? Are we getting new gear, or should we just keep deploying the stuff we have?
So if you in the past have received WCSC gear, like WCS rental gear, like it's usually like in this big box with a bunch of stuff in it, then you will be getting some biopaths gear. If you've never received that in the past, then you can just use your own gear. And sorry, I
Okay.
just see that Jason put his hand up. I don't know if he had something to add about the microphones.
Yeah, thanks. Just a quick point. It sounds like those SMMU2s, if you have any of those SMMU2s with the plastic cap still exposed, that was one of their first generations of that microphone, and they did actually release a little plastic mesh screen that they had you paste over that hole. Once the hole had been pecked through that plastic, it does actually mean that the microphone will then eventually fry due to rain. So they didn't have a solution for that I was aware of at the time. But if you have any that haven't yet been pecked, you can get that little plastic or that little metal meshing to protect those in the future.
Okay. We're protected with mesh. I will investigate. I'll contact the or look up the company and see what they've got to say. And then thanks for that. The just final question is, are we going to be getting our blank or our old data SD cards back, or should we buy new ones?
So I sent all of the BC cards back to Mandy. I don't know, Mandy, if I'm going to put you on the spot right now about if there's any updates on getting those back to the different parks.
You can put me on the spot. That's totally my fault. Yep, sorry, I've been completely behind times mailing those out, and yep, they're coming, Chris.
Great, thanks.
Sweet. So if there's no other questions about deployments, Then we get to move on to the next part, which in my opinion is just as exciting as field season, as the field part of things, and it's the desk work. And I want everybody in this call to be just as excited as these two gentlemen about it. Because as much fun as it is to go out and collect these data, it honestly, this part is probably one of the most important parts of this whole thing, to make sure that we organize the data and that you get it to me so that we can actually do cool analyses on them and actually gain some information from it. So that being said, please try as much as possible to do this step as soon as you collect the data. So whether it's the same day or within the next couple days after you finish collecting your equipment, grab your data, grab your SD cards, copy all of the data into a local hard drive and a USB drive if you have one available, and then ship that off to me right away. Specifically, if you are copying all of the data from the SD cards into a USB that you're shipping to me, make sure you follow this proper folder structure. The amazing code that Jason put together to help us run through all of these data really needs this to be set in place so that it works properly. And I mean every tiny little detail. This is going to be in the field guidebook as well. But if you see here, the main folder for each grid cell always has the grid cell number, underscore, and then whatever identifier you have for the grid cell. The identifier is not, it doesn't have to be the exact same as previous years, but for continuity's sake, it's easier if it is. Then under that folder, you have your folders for your different sites. Same thing, the number, underscore, and then the identifier for that site. Make sure that there's no spaces in between there. If you want to add extra information or extra something, you can add it afterwards, but this first little bit is very key. And then you'll have another folder for your transects, looking the same, but then you have two subfolders under that with transect of night 1 and night 2. The last folder that you will add is your site info folder. Make sure you put site info first so that the code doesn't start thinking that it's going to find recordings under this folder. And this is where you would put your temperature data information, old field forms if you weren't able to use survey 123, any other photos, any extra information for covariates or for things that are important for this grid cell, you can put under the site info folder. So like I said, this might take you, I don't know, 10 minutes to organize this folder structure. But if I receive a bunch of different USBs that have different folder structures, it's going to take me hours to go through that and organize it. So just take your time to do this. If you are just sending SD cards, that works just as fine. Just make sure to make it very clear what site and what grid cell that SD card comes from. I personally love coin envelopes. Put the SD cards in there and write in the front of the coin envelope, site, all of that information. And I find that that helps keep everything organized, but it doesn't have to be that. It could be anything, any way that you can make it very clear. And last year, in terms of the SD cards, it was pretty well organized. It was more folks that were sending me already organized folders. So there were some slight differences that caused a little bit of a headache. The last thing is if you are sending SD cards and you have other extra data, please make sure to either add it to one of the SD cards or add another extra SD card that has all of that site information if needed. Sorry, I'm just looking back at the chat. Oh, there you go. So if Chris, if you're interested, or if anybody else in the call is interested, Tori up in Alaska is willing to donate some SM2 BAT models, as well as calibrators. Likely, hopefully you can get in touch with each other and see if it's worth your time, considering that you would have to ship them through from the US into Canada. But thank you, Tori, for offering that up. That might be very helpful for a few folks. Awesome. So Once you have cleaned up, organized everything, made it all look perfect and match exactly what the field guidebook says, you get to ship all of your information to me. So whether that's SD cards or a USB stick or hard drive, please ship it to this address here. Again, it'll be in the field guidebook, but if you can take a little bit of time and write this information down, that would be great. Last year, I actually got you to ship your information to the University of Alberta. We still have access to that mailbox. So if something happens and you send it off there by mistake, don't fret, I can still access it, but it's just we've moved offices, so it would just be a lot easier for me to go and get the mailbox from downstairs rather than having to go all the way to the U of A. So ship those off again as soon as you get back. I would hope in an ideal situation within 5 days of collecting your data, you'll put that in and then you'll send it my way. At minimum, right now, I need everybody to have shipped their data to me by August 1st. Last year, I wasn't as diligent following up with people and being on people's case about this, and it's really pushed our timelines back. So learn from that mistake, and this year we're going to be really, really diligent about this. I will be sending lots of reminder emails. They're already scheduled in my inbox to go out. So please try to make it for this August 1st deadline. If anything happens and you really can't make this deadline happen, just get in touch with me. Like I said, I'm going to be sending you emails to remind you. Just reply to one of those. We can have a conversation and figure out what's wrong or if there's any way that I can help. But if I don't hear anything from you, it's just gonna be me emailing 20 different times. I'm gonna start spamming you. So ship everything by August, or at the very least, stay in touch so we can try and coordinate and problem solve together. So once you've done all of that, you're good to go. Your job's done. You can go home, enjoy, and be happy with yourself knowing that you helped the pass. But just because your job is done, it doesn't mean mine isn't. Mine is as well, and my job is actually just beginning at this point. So this is where I get to do my desk work part of things, so desk work ×2, and I will be as excited as these two guys as long as everybody does their part on their side of things. So once I get all of your data, I will go through it all, do some QA, QC, make sure everything looks fine, and as long as we've all kind of made our best to follow the protocols, this is not what I will look like. I will look like the happy fellas at the beginning. Because I'll be able to run through it all relatively quickly and catch any mistakes relatively easy. Once I'm done making sure that all the data is accounted for and it all makes sense, I will then run it through 2 different auto ID softwares, compile it all together, and then get it shipped off to be manually verified. And I was able to get this amazing photo of Brian manually verifying last year. Of course, this isn't actually him, but this might look a little bit of like what he looks like when he's doing all of this. Manual verification is very time intensive. It takes a lot of time and it's a lot of work. So the sooner we can get all of these data to him, the better. So that we can move on the process and make sure that we get all of the reports and all of the reporting done in time. So with that, once we get all the manual verification done and it's good to go, I get the data back. And this is when I use Jason's magical code to do the statistical analyses and trends. And it's also when, with clean data that's been manually verified, I make sure to upload it to the NNW program as well as WellTrack so that people can have access to their data, but also it can be widely shared within the bounds of whoever wants to share it, so that we can actually contribute to that larger program. And of course, the goal, the star, the reason why we do all of this is to get these numbers, right? So these are kind of the provincial scales and smaller scale trends that we can see. This is from 2023 reports that Jason and WCS put together. But as you can see, so far after all these years, we can tell that it looks like for the most part, all of our bat species are keeping the same, keeping status quo, which is exactly what we want to see, right? But we know there's these threats coming in and things are changing, and this is where all of this work really comes into play. But this reporting is not just on this kind of smaller provincial state scale, it's also on the large NABAT scale, right? These were released by NABAT last year. These are the relative abundance maps and the changes in relative abundance. And as you can see, especially out east, there has been quite a bit of change that's been going on. But I love to see this little bit of BC that's well covered, and you can see that within BC, we haven't seen much of a change yet in terms of abundance. And I'm hoping that we can extend these to also include Alberta and include the rest of BC to make sure that those numbers are up there and NABAT has access to them. And we can really talk about our bats and our information and make good management decisions based on that. So this is kind of the workflow for what I'm envisioning the field season of 2025 is going to look like. All of the analysis and reportings kind of goes into 2026. But once it's available, I am happy to share with everybody. If you want something specific for your grid cell, we can get in touch, and those can be developed for specific people. Because again, this is your data. I'm happy to share it with you and make sure that you have that information that you've put so much work towards. So that kind of covers that first part of this meeting. This second part is more specific towards folks that are either on contract or have been on contract with WCSC in the past, or that are using some of the equipment. So people that kind of don't understand what I'm saying right now, you are likely have not been included in this in the past. So you are welcome to leave, but if you want to learn more about the different types of equipment that we're using and how we're using them, you're also welcome to stick around. Before I give everybody a 5-minute break, I'm just going to quickly go through this paperwork page. So then when we come back, we can talk just about the recorders themselves. So in terms of paperwork, the one thing that I will need from everybody is a volunteer waiver form filled out and signed. This waiver form mainly makes sure that kind of the relationship between biopaths and yourself is well established, but also if you do take any photos and stuff like that, there's a bit of a photo release statement there at the end. So I will be emailing everybody kind of the PDF for you to fill out, send back to me, and then I'll send you a copy. For people that have been on contracts with WCS in the past, all of that paperwork is being moved over to biopaths. So I have a list of all of you. I will reach out to you with the full contract. Make sure you read it through, especially because it is going to be slightly different from the WCS contract that you might have signed in the past. Read it through, and if you agree and everything looks good, send me back a signed copy. And if you have any questions, just let me know and we can kind of target them. The biggest, I think, difference between the contracts with WCS and the contract now with biopaths is that we have a very hard deadline of submitting any expenses incurred to 90 days. So if you buy batteries, if you have mileage, any of those things, they have to be submitted to me, well, to us, before that 90-day expiry date, or else we're going to have a lot of issues trying to pay that out to you. So that being said, if you can include all of your invoices and stuff like that together with that expense claim, it'll be easier for you, and it'll be easier for everybody involved. So I will email everybody about paperwork. So if you have any questions, let me know. I'm assuming no, and questions will probably come up more once that paperwork is actually emailed out. So that being said, like I mentioned, the last part of this meeting is going to be focusing on this specific set of equipment. I do want to give everybody just a 5-minute break, and also myself a 5-minute break. So I'm going to start up again at 2:55 Mountain Time. So whatever time that is, wherever you're at, it's 5 minutes from now. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them right now, or if not, I'm just going to quickly turn off my mic and my video for a sec. Hey, welcome back, everybody. Sweet. So, like I mentioned before, now what I'm going to talk about is more this new newish equipment that some of you might will be working with. So, like I mentioned, this year is the year that Biodiversity Pathways is taking over pretty much everything that WCSC has done in the past, and that includes the rental of some of this equipment. So we've chosen to go with the Chorus and the EM Touch, for the Chorus for stationary acoustics and the EM Touch for transects. So I'm going to go over how to use these. Again, these will be included in writing, so you can talk about, review that later. And I'm also going over the Rangers because these are the units that are being used in Alaska. So because the Chorus and the Rangers are very similar, I'll go over both of them kind of at the same time and over how to use the rest of the equipment as well. So to begin with the Chorus / Ranger, this is what the Chorus looks like. When you get it, you'll get it in a box, and the microphone is going to be attached. It's not going to be attached. It's going to be in the box in some bubble wrap. So just make sure that you make sure to attach the microphone before you start deploying anything for the choruses. When you open up the unit itself, you'll see this main screen and this main side, but then you'll also see kind of on this side, I want to highlight that I've written in Sharpie on the inside of the lid the unit number. So whenever you're writing in the ID for the unit that you use on survey 123, that's where you can get the ID for whatever unit you end up getting. Now, going to actually deploying these guys, if you're the very first one in kind of the rotation of equipment that gets this, you will have an SD card already inserted here at the top. If you don't, this is where you put your SD card and your batteries. I want to highlight this little ribbon here. When you put your batteries in, make sure that the ribbon stays behind the batteries, because it'll make it really easy for you to remove the batteries afterwards once you're done. Without it, it just takes a little bit of finicking and moving the batteries around to get it. So you insert your batteries, your SD card. All of the settings should be good to go on the units, but if you have everything attached and it's good to go, and you look at the screen and it says no work to do, it'll cycle through a couple different things, but you can see one that says no work to do. It means that the mode hasn't actually been turned on. So it means that even if you deploy this, it's not actually going to start recording anything. So make sure you don't see that. And the way that you make sure that the mode is on is you hit this mode button until the light is turned on beside the moon and the stars. This puts it in night mode, so it's going to be active 30 minutes before sunset and 30 minutes after sunrise, and it'll be triggered recordings. Again, those settings have already been updated into the units themselves. But if you want to make sure that the settings are good to go, if you want to confirm as you're putting stuff into survey 123 and as you're deploying, you can go to the different menus using these buttons here at the top. So you'll just scroll and press OK to get to the certain menus. The one that has the microphone gives you information like your gain setting, triggers, your sample rate, all of that information you can find under this specific menu. And if you go under the clock menu, that's where you can update what time zone you're in to make sure that the clock here actually matches where you're at. This guy here is the GPS. If you're in an open space, the GPS should find itself, and that's how it sets sunset and sunrise based on its location. And then the SD card is just making sure that the SD card is connected. So if you have all of those settings good to go, you can check to make sure that the mic is properly attached and is working. And I'm just going to replay that here. You can see there's this tiny little bar that goes up and down. There you can actually see it going up and down a little bit more as I move my fingers closer to it. As long as that bar moves when you like rub your fingers close to it, you know that it's detecting some ultrasonic sound. So the microphone's working and it looks good. So jumping over to the Ranger, like I said, they're very similar units made by the same people, but they do look a little bit different. Big one here that you can see is the microphone for the Ranger is actually attached in the front of the unit rather than in the sides. And the screen here is actually touch screen, so you don't have to use those buttons. The same spots, you actually have 2 spots for SD cards, but you still have that same ribbon, same thing as with the Chorus. Same thing, if you see the no work to do, it means the mode hasn't been turned on. Hit that mode button until you get the light on that moon and the stars. Now, if you want to look at the settings and make sure that you have the right settings, in this case, you will be just hitting the screen. If you hit this gear button, it'll open up a bunch of different menus specifically related to the unit itself. The one that's going to be most important for you is going to be hitting the region and getting your time zone correct there. Just to make sure that you're following the right time so that it knows when to turn on and off. If you want to look at information about sample rate, about triggers and stuff like that, you will find that by just clicking or touching this part here where it says FS ultrasonic. It can change depending on how you choose it, but just hit there and then you can find all that information there. And same like with the Chorus, you can do a mic check. The only difference with the Rangers is that the mic check, instead of having kind of that vertical little line that goes up and down, it's just a horizontal at the bottom. And the Ranger can actually record birds and bats at the same time. So it actually has 3 different bars at the bottom for each one of the potential mics that you can attach to it. So if you decide to also deploy some bird units at the same time, you can look into that as well. So you've set everything up, it looks good. Now you're going to close your unit and you're going to deploy it. But when you close it, you look at it and there's this light that's flashing in the front. If you see that light flashing in the front like that, it means that something's not right. So you have to reopen your unit, make sure that your microphone's plugged in correctly, make sure that you have an SD card, look at everything, because that is a very easy way to know that it's not going to record properly for whatever reason. In the Chorus, the menu is really nice because you have the 4 options of the menu, and whatever option is not working, it'll flash. So you can kind of help that way in. So Erin, in terms of the recommended settings, I will be adding that to the handout, or not to the handout, to the field guide. Will be there as an appendix, so you can check it there. Awesome. So you've closed your unit. There's no flashing lights. You're all good to go. You can do one last test to make sure that the microphone's working well and that everything's good to go. And it's using this little lanyard. So all of the units come with a lanyard attached to it. At the end of it, there's a little magnet. So kind of like I'm doing in this video, you put up the magnet to where the magnet sign is. And if the red light flashes when the magnet is there, it tells you that it's good to go, and you should be good to deploy that. So at that point, you'll attach it to wherever you're attaching it with deployment. For the echoes, I have sent everybody a bunch of zip ties. So you can just zip tie the unit to the top as close as possible to the microphone of the other WCS units that you're deploying, so that they're close enough that you can get the similar enough recordings, or pretty much the same recordings, hopefully. So that is, oh, and one last thing for both the echoes and the Rangers. If you close it and you just close it with your one finger, or you don't like really close it shut, it's actually not fully sealed. So make sure you hear a big snap to make sure that it's fully closed. I know some folks in Alaska last year, unfortunately, didn't close it all the way, and it wasn't properly sealed. A lot of humidity got into the unit and kind of wrecked the units. So please make sure you just really put a little bit of force into it. It's not a ton, but here that last click, and you can check by making sure that it's not moving. So you can try pulling it and it shouldn't move at all. So these are pretty intuitive units. Hopefully you won't have too many issues with it, but like I said, all of this will be in writing. And if anybody has any questions about them while they're either deploying, if you're within cell range or right before you're deploying, feel free to send me an email or give me a call. That being said, I say give me a call. I will make sure to include my phone number as well in the email with the follow-up that I send. Does anybody have any questions about these two units? Great. So we're just speeding along. So the next unit that we're going to talk about is the Echometer Touch. So two things, the big thing about the Echometer Touch is that you do need an app on your device, in your own device, to make these guys work. The devices have to have a USB-C or at the very least a micro USB port. If you have an iPhone, an old iPhone with that the lightning port, unfortunately you won't be able to use the EMTs. But I've been in touch with folks and hopefully everybody's aware of that and we're kind of working around that problem. But please make sure that you have either a phone or a tablet. A computer doesn't quite work. You can try to see if you can download the app on your computer, but I think most computers just are not compatible for using the app. I did put up the links to the app up here, so you can take a picture of the screen and get to the correct app, or you can also just look up Echometer Touch Bat Detector and in whatever app store you use, and it should be able to pop up there. When you download the app, if you have an Echometer logged in, this will be the live mode screen, and I will show you what that looks like in a second. If you don't have it, it looks like this, but regardless, the first thing that you're going to want to look into when you have your unit and it's all set up is going into the 3 lines here at the top so you can get to the settings section. This is where you need to double check that all the settings are correct. All of the settings are, if I remember correctly, they're all the factory settings are the same as the settings that we use. But just double check to make sure it's good to go. The only one that is kind of up to you, whether or not you want to use it, is this real-time auto ID. So the Echometer kind of has that kaleidoscope software within it, so it can auto ID as it goes. So you can have it on or off. If you're able to look at your device while you're doing your transect, you can see what bats it thinks it's recording. But if you do decide to have it on, make sure that you move this from balanced all the way to accurate, so that we're not getting misidentifications of bats. That being said, I'm gonna run all of these through auto ID anyways in my own way. So if you end up not turning it on, or if you forget to put it from balanced to accurate, I'll still be running it again, so it's not a super big deal. But here you can see all the settings, change them up. You can't really see them here because they're blacked out a bit, but once you have your EMT Pro plugged in, this will also be available. And just make sure you have the right settings there. When you have the right settings and when you have the device plugged in, you will look at this screen. This is back to that main live mode screen. This is just a picture, so you can't see, but it's actually in real time. So if there's any sounds or anything like that, it'll continue to move and you'll be able to see those sounds. Before you start recording or before you do anything, make sure you go under this gear wheel at the top and ensure that the minimum trigger frequency is set to 8 kilohertz. Just so that we know exactly we have the right setting for when it's going to get triggered. These 2 sections here regarding spectrogram brightness and contrast, it's for your benefit. how bright you want the spectrogram to be if you are going to keep a close eye on it. So you're welcome to change these as needed. Now, you've done all the settings, you've made sure everything matches the way it should, and you're ready to record. So for these recordings, for these units, I do have an extension cord, so an extension USB-C cord, so that you can attach the unit to that same car mount that you would use for your other transects, again, using zip ties, and then you don't have to have your tablet or your cell phone at the top of your car. Once you're ready to go, you will hit that record button. Now, I want to make it very clear that there's two buttons here at the bottom. One has an M in it, that's manual record. So what that means is that it's actually going to record absolutely everything and it's not going to be triggered at all. But then this other guy that's just the red circle is actually the triggered recordings. So it's going to scan as you go and only record if it gets that 8 kilohertz trigger minimum, right? So when you hit the button, the way that you make sure that it's actually recording and it's not just in normal live mode is looking up here. You'll see that you have this green little dot and then it tells you the time for how long it's been recording. If you look down here, this will also actually be animated and you'll see the little red line moving around the big red circle. And that's how you make sure that you're actually recording as you go along. Because like I said, in the live mode screen, you can still see things moving through, but make sure that you're actually recording the things as you move through. Once you're done, you can hit that button again and it'll stop the recording. And then you're back to your normal live mode screen. At this point, you want to export those recordings so that you can send them to me. Again, you go back to the 3 lines at the top left there, and this time you hit recordings. All of the triggered recordings will pop up here, and they will be color coded based on the recording that you hit. So if you do one for each night, you will have the one night in purple and the next night maybe in blue, whatever it might be. But you'll see all of these recordings here. Now, to actually export them, you will hit the edit button at the top and it'll give you the opportunity to select the recordings that you want. So if you're doing it right after the first night, you can just select all by hitting this little check mark. Or if you have other recordings from previous stuff, you can hit the first one and then hit and hold the last recording of that session that you're interested in, and it'll highlight all of them. Once they're highlighted, I didn't include a picture of it here, but this will kind of turn like an orange color. The check mark will turn an orange color. Once you highlight them, you can hit the share button and you can either upload it to the cloud somewhere, you can send it via email, all of these different ways that you can share it. But same thing, like I said before, try to do this as soon as you get home so that you don't start confusing stuff, and you can make sure that everything gets in time. Great. So this is it for the EMT. Again, here's the links, but you can just look up EMT app. And if you have any more questions about it, please let me know. I do encourage you to download this app right away so you can kind of mess around with it, even if you don't have the unit itself. And then as soon as you get the unit, make sure that it does work with whatever device you're using. The last guy that we're going to go through is the Kestrel Drop. Again, this guy also requires another app, but hopefully it's not as divisive. I don't know if that's the right word. But again, you can take a picture of these and that'll take you to the app, or you can just look up Kestrel Link app. The big thing about the Kestrels to keep in mind is that the way you turn them on is by putting the battery in them. So the second that the battery's in them, they're on and they're going. So make sure that if you get them and you want to kind of test them out while you're at home, you can do that. But whenever you're done, just take the battery out, or else the Kestrel will continue to log the temperature and humidity in your drawer until you actually put it out, and it's obviously going to drain the battery. So you download the app, you put the battery into the Kestrel, and in the main screen, you'll have the screen of devices, and should be able to find and connect to the right device as long as your Bluetooth is on. Once you connect, you can hit the settings button and manage device data. The big thing that you will need to update here is that their default is the data logging rate is every 30 minutes, and we just want to update that to be every 15 minutes. That's the main thing to update, but everything else should be good to go. If you have the battery in it, you will put it in one of these solar radiation shields. Everybody is going to get a Kestrel with a solar radiation shield. And then set it up as close as possible to your deployment within reason, so that it collects those data. If this is going to be used for the transect, then just attach it to that car mount as well, and then you can get the data there. So you deployed it, you're good to go. Now you're coming back to download the data. Again, pretty simple. Hit that Manage Device Data button again. And make sure you sync the log first to sync all the information from the Kestrel into your phone, and then you can export the log. It'll create a CSV that you can email to yourself, upload to your cloud, whatever it is, and then either put in a USB to ship to me, or email to me, or get it to me, whichever way works best for you. So with all of that, I think that kind of covers all of the units and all the new things. Please let me know if you have any questions about these units. Like I said, this year, you're going to be deploying 2 units for everything, right? So you're going to have 2 units recording at a transect, 2 units doing everything. The only thing that you won't have doubles of are these Kestrel drops. But the hope for that is so that we can calibrate and make sure that any differences that we see between these 2 years, or between this year and previous years, is not due to changing equipment, but it is actually due to some difference that we might see in the bat population. So thank you, everybody, for coming around today. I can answer any questions for the last 10-ish minutes or so. And I see Jason has one, so you can go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Kimmy. First of all, just apologize for my voice. I am sick today, so it's been yeah, my voice is very, very gravelly. What I wanted to mention was just reinforce how important it is to get the microphones with the paired units aligned. So for the transects and the stationary units, would be wonderful to have microphones pointing the same direction, same orientation, and especially on the transects with the openings aligned on the front of the SD1 microphone barrel.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just kind of reinforcing the importance of that, because it's critical to getting that correction factor proper. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for highlighting that. I'm trying to get to that slide where you can actually see the EMT. There we go. So if you see, this is where it'll be attached, and the microphone itself is going to be on this end here. So make sure when you attach it that this guy is pointing the same way of the other microphone. Thank you, Jason, for highlighting that. Yeah, if you can take photos, especially for the stationaries, you should be getting photos of both units being deployed together. But for the transects as well, get lots of good photos. That would be great. Thanks, Sam, for pointing that out as well.
Hey, Cami, sorry, I can't figure out how to put my hand up.
No, you're good.
We're going to order some Kestrel drops for Aaron's grid cells up in the interior. Do you prefer the ones that are just temperature, or the ones that are temperature plus humidity?
Ideally, if you can get the temperature plus humidity, that would be that would be great. So unless it's going to be a big drain on your funding, but if it's not a big deal, go with the humidity ones.
Great, can do. Thanks.
Oh, so unfortunately, I wasn't able to get pictures of the deployments side by side, because the units for WCS are in BC and I just shipped my set of things. I don't know if Heather is on the line still, maybe. Oh yeah, Heather. I don't know if Heather, if you have extra time, if you can take a couple pictures of trying to see what that looks like, or whoever is the first grid cell leader, if you do manage to get good pictures and want to share with the rest of the group, that would be awesome. Yeah, sorry, Sam, I wasn't able to get those this time around.
So we will try to get some pictures, do some mock-ups and take some pictures, if that'd be helpful.
That would be awesome, Heather.
Okay.
So Felix, the car mount, sorry, I'm just looking. No, so we're not using this EM Touch car mount. You're just gonna be using the same car mount from before, from the one that WCSE has set in place. So you just have to like attach it using a zip. Yeah, you just zip it in and it should be good to go. So if nobody has any more questions, I can give you back 8 minutes of your day. Thank you again so much, everybody. I will be following up within the next week with all of those links and all of that extra information for everybody. But if you have any questions until then, feel free to shoot me an email. Have a great one, everybody. Thank you so much. Yeah, I don't know if you stepped away from your computer, if you have a question.